Well, hey there, friends. It's Leslie Hughes here. And today I had the pleasure and the privilege of talking with Laura Beauparlant, who is the author of Brand Chemistry and the founder of Brand Camp. So, obviously, we talked all things brand, standing in your value, and all sorts of other great stuff. So, I hope that you enjoy my chat with Laura. And be sure to let us know what your key takeaway is from today's chat. So, enjoy my chat with Laura. All right, so let's begin. So hi, Laura, even though I've already
Hi,
said hello.
Leslie. I know.
So I'm going to do
Thanks for having me.
sure. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this because when I think of brand, you're my gal. You're my gal. So I'm just going
Thanks.
to do a little intro on you. So
Sure.
well, you're the founder of Lab Creative. You and I have known each other for at least 16 years, maybe more, 16 or
Yeah,
17 years.
something like that.
See.
I
Way
know.
back when I used to work at Wedding Bells, and you were at your old loft, before
I
kids,
know. Oh my
before
gosh.
husbands.
A lifetime ago.
It was. And to think how far we've come. So you're the
I
founder of
know.
Lab Creative, and you've got this awesome book called
Thank
Brand
you.
Chemistry. So you're a creative director, brand strategist, speaker, and so as the founder and chief brand alchemist at Lab Creative, you leverage your unique process to help entrepreneurs understand and embrace their magic and create explosive brands that stand out from the crowd, attract the right clients, and reach new levels of impact, influence, and success. And you're also a speaker, and you've got some amazing stories insofar as your background. And I think we'll get into some of that stuff, I'm sure, because I think I think you and I've had these other side conversations about how bold I feel like you are. Like I don't know if you feel like you are, but you've been a huge inspiration to me. As I said, when I used to work at Wedding Bells, and you were with Laura K Design, just always coveted so much about you as an entrepreneur and your confidence and how bold you are. You're just a lovely, bold, embracing your value kind of gal. And I was like, whatever she's got, I want some of that.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So you've been recognized for the chemistry that you create with your audience, and informs, inspires, and candidly shares insights of your own story to overcoming adversity. That's the what we'll probably talk about too. Finding clarity both in life and in business. And yeah, so thank you again for joining me here, because I think one of the things that I wanted to do in this sort of series of videos that I'm doing is the thing that I find over and over again with my clients is how often, it doesn't matter how high up in the food chain they are, a lot of people don't like talking about themselves. A lot of people don't. Most of us have this sort of imposter syndrome of sort of feeling like, I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to brag about myself. The person that I know, the Laura K Beauparlant that I know, has never been shy about owning your value. So how have you done that? Like, how is it that you've just always been like, I'm amazing and I do great work and I deserve to be compensated for the work that I do. And I think a lot of us, I mean, I have admired that because you've done it with confidence and not arrogance. And that's the secret.
Interesting. So I will say that I have not always felt that way. And I don't, because I think a lot of people can look at somebody online or, and it's like, oh, they've always been this way, or they've never struggled with this. And I've 100% struggled with imposter syndrome. I've 100% been scared to share things or held back. But what I did was a lot of work on me, because I was holding back. I was not shining as brightly as I could, if you can believe that. There was a time where I felt like I was dampening my success. I was not sharing it. I wasn't celebrating it. I was downplaying it.
Hmm.
And
I don't
there's a
know
whole
that girl.
back.
I don't know that girl.
Well, but you've known her, you've seen her, but you just didn't realize, because I was still visible and out there, but it was almost more in my personal life in some aspects. And did I say too much? Am I too much? What will people think if I have that opinion? I held back a lot of my opinions. And I do less of that now. I still remember writing a blog post and I was like, oh my God, like,
And yeah. Been
and
there.
just sitting there going, oh my God, what are people going to say? And it was shared and people loved it. And it created this really interesting conversation because it was something that is widely used. And I really despise this term. And so I wrote a whole blog post about it. And it was just so fascinating. I'm like, oh, people actually were quite interested and also shared my opinion.
Yeah.
And so I've always been a bit more of a people pleaser and trying to like not rock the boat. And so now I'm at a place where I'm more willing to rock the boat, more willing to state my strong opinion about something, but back it up with why I feel that way. And it doesn't mean that everybody needs to feel that way, but sharing that. And I've realized that the more of me I share, the more people connect with me. The more I share of me, the more opportunities that brings in kind of weird and roundabout ways. So, but, you know, I've shared the story that I used to straighten my hair because I thought that made me look more professional. I was young when I started my business. I was 27, blonde, curly hair, and I was like, nobody's going to take me seriously. A lot of this is the mental chatter that we have, right? Nobody ever told me that curly hair was not professional. But to me, I felt like if I had this sleek hairdo, I'll be taken more seriously. And then when you look at the difference between how I show up now, curly hair and floral jackets and all, compared to that more subdued side of me, like it's an interesting dance that we have. So have I always been confident? No, but I'm actively working on it and making sure that my self-image is really strong. And so I write how do I want to feel, right? I step into my, I call them my $1 million Laura shoes when I'm going to do something to step into that person that I'm working towards being or want to be in that moment. So I think there's a lot of little things, but I've also been challenged. I remember being on a live stream on YouTube and somebody calling me a brand strategist. And I was like, no, I'm not really, I wouldn't call myself that. And I was they're like, well, why not? And then I was like, wait a minute. Damn it, I am a brand strategist. But I was afraid of that term because I didn't feel like, well, I didn't go to school for that. And I don't feel like I have that education, but I'm like, that is the work that I'm doing. So I've kind of dipped my toe and now I'm like, no, yeah, I'm fully embracing these things.
Yeah, because as well, you'll share is that a brand is much more than just a logo. I mean, you've said that from the very beginning, since the day that I met you. Was always in your brand. I mean, the designs that you did way back in the Wedding Bells days were to me, so different, so unique, so beautiful. And as I've told you a million times, the colors that you were using in your wedding invitations inspired me to go with the colors on my brand. And the same thing, terrified. I'm like, maybe I should go with like a muted blue or something green or something. And then I was like, I'm going to Laura K this, and I'm going to go with the hot pink and the orange and the red, and I'm going to go for it because if Laura K says I can do it, then damn skip, And I just loved how, regardless of whether you did have a client that had more subdued colors or they went with the punchy, big, colorful stuff, your stuff always stood heads and tails. It was just different. It was unique. It was Laura. And, and I know that our editors at the magazine continue to come back to you over and over again because the quality of the work that you put out, the fact that you are always, I try to tell this to my public relations students that it's all about like making sure that, when you get sort of media coverage, when the media comes to you and says, hey, can you do this? You go, yeah, I'll drop everything. I'll get it done, that kind of thing. So anyway, so that's a little side note that's in my brain when I think of like when editors need stuff. But my point is that you have always stood out and you've always had a very unique look from not only your designs, but how you show up. And so I'm going to let you talk because this is your jam. This is your wheelhouse. So a brand is much more than just a logo, right?
Absolutely. And, I don't even do the design anymore. I have a designer who's been designing with me, Maria, for 5 years, actually, basically since Lab Creative was created. I just celebrated the 5th anniversary last week.
Yes.
And she's been with me since the beginning. And thank you, 2 years from the book. So, while I'm not doing the design anymore, I'm art directing, we're collaborating, and she's in many ways way more talented than me as a designer, but we have a design language that we understand and that we work on creating. So each client's design is very unique, and yet there is a Lab Creative flair to everything we do. And so that's a part of it. So part of it is we are known for our style and the work we do. I just did an Instagram story about a client who said, "You're kind of blowing my mind right now with something that we created for her." And I'm like, yeah, we're in the business of blowing people's minds. Like that's what I want to do. But when it comes to your brand, I think part of going back to my previous business with the stationery and invitations was that I stayed true to my aesthetic. And this is so relevant for every business today because we feel like we have to be everything to everybody, that there's not enough business, that you have to be a people pleaser. And so, I never wrapped a ribbon or added a jewel to a wedding invitation I did. I had a no ribbon policy. If people ask for ribbons, I'm like, I'm not your gal, to take a phrase from you, like that was absolutely not. I'm like, you could throw a ribbon on it after it leaves my office. That's up to you. I said, but I'm an anti-ribbon around a wedding invitation person. That's not my style. It's about the design. And at the time when I started, there were very few like designers creating wedding invitations. And I had a very unique look. And so maybe I got less business because I was very true to like, this is the aesthetic that I'm doing, but then I got the right clients. And so the same is true for every business. When you focus on a certain type of product or the way you offer something, you're not going to attract everybody. And that is the purpose, right? Like I attracted amazing clients who valued design and wanted the aesthetic that I could offer. And so it's relevant for people to think about that in their business because it's not just about the logo or your website or the physical trinket or product or service that you're selling. It's how you're selling it. It's how you package it up. It's what's unique about what you do. And that was something that I was always known for previously, to the point where I remember a photographer saying to me, I photographed one of your weddings last weekend. I'm thinking, how would he have known that? I didn't have, my logo wasn't on any piece of stationery, like a place card or seating chart. He said, I recognized your style. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And that is the power of a brand.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you look at your industry, for people that are watching this, look at what do other people look like? What do they sound like? How are they positioning themselves? And how can you be different from that?
Yeah.
Right. We have such a huge opportunity, especially because now everything's digital, right? We've got to create really valuable content, but consistent content so that it's instantly recognizable and we're known for something, not everything to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a struggle for me as an entrepreneur. I know of that fear of if I'll just be everything to everyone. And I remember when I was going through my business course, there was always the question of what makes you different than everybody else. And almost universally, the entire, whatever the business was in the class, everyone said, I'm cheaper than the next guy. Which is, I've learned from Seth Godin, excuse me, I've learned from reading Seth Godin that, be careful if you're on the race to the bottom because you just might win. And when you're everything to everyone, you're absolutely no one. And I think about the metaphor of like if someone's having, say, a medical issue or something like that, and like you don't know what to do. If you just say to people generally, somebody call 911, no one does it. They'll just stand there and go, me. But if you point to someone and say, you call 911. And so you have to sort of do that. And that's probably a really bad sort of metaphor, but I just think about that. You have to get really, really focused on who that target audience is. And I get it because I've struggled with it. I'm like, I wanted to be the social media girl. And I kind of was in the beginning, right? Because nobody else was really doing social media. And then I pivoted into the sort of the LinkedIn world because you can't swing a dead cat now without hitting anybody and sort of, and social media is digital. It is marketing. It is all those things. And the last thing I sort of want to say before I ask you the next question is what my friend, I've obtained this from my friend Amy Davies, who calls it imprinting, which I think is a really powerful word for that. That branding is imprinting because every time that we have any kind of interaction with our prospects, our target audience, whomever it is, that imprint along the way, right? It's like that brand resonance that, you know, over the repeated exposure. And that can be, and I think of it as, I show up even when I'm teaching my college classes, when I was going in real life, I would show up in the same dress that I would show up to do like a keynote, the same little high heel shoes, the same dress, because it was like me putting on my uniform or my brand, not necessarily for my students, but for myself, because I wanted to show up that way.
Yeah, and you said something interesting. So before you ask your next question,
I know, go ahead.
You know, talking about your audience and that. So I just started a session of Brand Camp today with 4 amazing entrepreneurs, which I do kind of on a monthly basis. I start a new group. And the first thing we do is around your target audience. And it's not so much about the demographics. We really focus on the psychographics.
So sure.
It's like, what do they care about? What do they value? What are their desires? Like, how can you help them? And then finding the commonality so that you can speak to them, you know, more accurately. And so I use this analogy, and you spoke about Seth Godin, and it's the same thing, that, you know, if you're selling a commodity, you're selling what you do, and it's a commodity. Essentially, we're all in essence selling the same thing. So it's not what you're selling, it's how you're selling it. And you have to create that heart-to-heart connection with your audience and not the brain to brain, because what happens when you create more of that cerebral connection, they're going to go to somebody who's the cheapest or more conveniently located. Mm-hmm. When you create a heart-to-heart connection, people are going to like get up at 6 a.m. to have a call with you, or they're going to drive 2 hours to see you, or they're going to pay more. Mm-hmm. And that's where you want to be, because they just know they have to work with you. You're the only choice for them. Mm-hmm. And that's very different than this, I'm cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. And I work with a lot of people in similar industries. We don't just work with people in one industry, but I've worked with a lot of different naturopaths and a lot of different people in financial services, and a lot of people, the different coaches. Every single one I've worked with has a completely different messaging, has a completely different look and feel and personality, because they are different and their journey and process they take people on. But a lot of their training might be similar. Mm-hmm. So it's just finding a different way, and everybody has an opportunity to position themselves as way more than just cheaper than the next guy.
Yeah, and being on the race to the bottom, I found that, and this is long in my sales days, it was the people that wanted to nickel and dime that were the biggest pains in the butt, right? If it just becomes that commodity of a money thing, then you're right, people are not as invested into it. In fact, I just noticed this past week, and I don't want to out anybody, but you know, when it comes to sort of friends, I will help them with their LinkedIn profile. And I've noticed with every single person that I have done it for free, it still isn't live on their profile. So unless
because there's no value, there's no perceived value in what you've done. Mm-hmm. It's the same with, you know, the free stuff. Like, people are less committed to something if it's free or inexpensive, rather than if they're spending money on something, they're like, well, I'm going to show up to those calls, or I'm going to show up and do the work. Mm-hmm. So there is that value that is just known, that human nature, even an event, you know, virtual or in person, when people pay a small amount, they're much more likely to show up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Than if it's a free event, right? Webinars, I think, notoriously have like really low, you know, attendee rates compared to people that register. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Whereas I remember a couple of years ago doing a live event and just charging like maybe $20. People could come, they would get like muffin and coffee, and I did a talk. And I think only one person didn't show up.
Yeah. Because they have skin in the game. They have skin in the game for sure. Yeah. And the more that I've noticed too, and like, it's the same thing. It's like as like, it's been hard for me in some ways. And that's why I always considered, I always thought I was crappy at sales. So it's because I hated doing that. Here's the contract. Because I really genuinely, you know, that's why we stayed friends forever, was because that I really sincerely care about the people that I work with. And so for me, it was almost like I'm getting better at standing in the value of what I charge now. And in fact, I've heard from my clients as well that was a differentiation, that I wasn't the cheapest out there. I wasn't the most expensive. I was kind of like Goldilocks. It was like, okay, so you didn't sort of blow my mind going,
just perfect. Yeah.
That's right. And so now that, and some people, when I tell them what I charge to write a LinkedIn profile, they kind of go, whoa. And then when I go through the process, and you blew my mind with that too, Laura, when I was getting married and going through and saying, how much for invitations? Like I've been selling ad space. And then I was like talking to you and you're like, yeah, it's not like you're showing up at the dollar store, just picking up a dollar, girlfriend. You're like, how much time does it take me to put this together? And the consultation and my years of experience and I was like, oh yeah. So it's not just going to Grand and Toy, well, back at Grand and Toy was around or whatever, or going to Staples and getting the cheapest thing out there. You're making an investment because it's the brand and it's the experience and it's the whole thing. And you were saying that sets, told me this, it sets the stage for what the wedding was going to be like. And I was like, wow, like it's these subconscious things we don't necessarily think about because we just think, I can do that. So many people, especially when it comes to art, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah. And I think, going back to talking about weddings, to me, it was sort of this idea, like we're creating a brand for the wedding. Right? Like, and capturing the personalities of the people getting married and the experience you want your guests to have. And, do you want it to just feel like people, when they leave, they're like, well, that was a wedding.
Yeah.
Right? Or, wow, that was amazing. And those invitations set the tone. And so all of those touch points, it's no different than the experience people have with your business, from the touch points from the visiting your website, seeing you on social media, the emails they get from you, the services. It's like there's parallels there. Obviously they're different, but you can see the correlation between the two.
Well, 100%. And to your point, like that first touch point, and I'm still surprised in this day and age that people don't have websites. It's kind of shocking to me in a way, because for me, when the customer or the client goes through that journey, even if I say, hey, Laura, I've got this best blah, blah, blah that you need to check them out, you're going to Google that person. And usually the website, the LinkedIn profile, those are the two things that usually appear the most prominent. And people are going to go, and you're right, they have to have that gut feeling. It's that pre-verbal part of our, it's our lovely amygdala and the pre-verbal part of our brain that kind of makes me feel like, oh, I just get this person. And it's to your point, and this is what you and I are in the simpatico with this, it's mirroring back that language of like who I am, it's sort of like the who, what, when, where, why, and how, but who am I and who are you? And can I show up in my authentic self and make sure that I'm speaking to the client or the prospect in a language that they get? And I think it's underestimated, the importance of that a lot. I think of it like at a concert too. Like anytime we go to a concert, and back in the days when we had concerts, and when the singer would sort of say like, hey, Toronto, like everybody go, like it's that local thing, or like I'm kind of my secret, is it a secret? I'm a Billy Joel fan, so I don't know if it should be ashamed to admit it, or should I, so I should be unabashed about it. And whenever he would sort of change the lyrics of some of his songs into Toronto-based stuff, we all sit a little higher. We all just sort of like, he gets us, like he knows us. It's not just the same old, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's finding that way to connect. And it also, I think it brings us more joy as entrepreneurs. It makes it easier for us to show up because we're not trying to be something that we're not. We're trying to fit, the square peg in a round hole. Yeah. We are able to be ourselves and know that the right people will not just accept us, but embrace us and run towards us. And so I see a powerful brand magnetizes the right clients to you and actually repels the wrong clients.
Yeah. And that's been, I think, a tough thing as people pleasers, right? Because universally we all want to be accepted, and almost everybody doesn't want to be rejected. And I think that's what I am hearing from a lot of my clients, as I said, even as high as like some of the biggest CEOs that I have worked with, and a few politicians, quite frankly. I thought it was a female thing. I thought it was a Canadian thing. And then I realized it's an everybody thing, that it's really hard. And I use this statement all the time, that when you're inside the jar, you can't see the label. And getting outside and seeing how other people see you can be a little uncomfortable for a lot of us. But I think that that's kind of what you and I do, is sort of mirror back. So what you're saying to me is, and oftentimes that's what I'm doing, is when I'm writing the profiles, I'm taking all the language, all the way that they describe things, and the same thing is like, even if they're in the same industry, I mirror it back to them and they go, yeah, that sounds about right. Or that, it's, I think of the NLP, right? Are they visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? And so it's, that sounds about right. That looks about right. That feels about right. So it's using all the some modalities to tell that story. But I think all of that is so very important, because you're right. It does repel. If someone goes, I can't stand Leslie, she drives me crazy. It's like, it's hard. Admittedly, I don't like to get that feedback. And I have to give room for the fact that I'm not going to please everybody. Not everybody pleases me. So if someone says, like, she's too chatty, or I got on one of the feedback forms, Laura, that I got when I was speaking, was, she seemed a little manic. And I was like, yeah, maybe so, to a bunch of editors, right? I had to go, why am I focusing on that one bad review as opposed to embracing the 99 other ones that said I did a good job? Because I'm going to show up with authenticity. I'm going to show up being of service. And I think that helps to reframe the brag, at least when I'm talking to my clients. That's what I'll say is, when you're coming from a place of service, that's what you're selling, is that you're there for them. You're not there for you.
Yeah. So you said something earlier about confidence versus arrogance.
Yeah.
And I just thought I would leave that, just something just prompted me to think about that again. And I think part of the difference is, showing up with confidence is like inviting people in to celebrate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And arrogance is just, it's like telling them that you're doing these things in order to make them small.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so, I like this analogy. I used to think that when I shone brighter, like when I shine as bright as possible, that I would actually dim the lights of other people, that somehow I would cast a shadow on them by me shining bright as this big, ball of light, whatever, however you want to visualize that. And then I had this moment where I thought, oh my God, I'm not casting a shadow. I'm actually creating light for them.
Yeah.
I'm illuminating all of us, everybody in my sphere. And that was a real shift for me. And I think that idea of how you show up and share can be seen as the same way. If you're like that very narrow spotlight light, like, look at me, I'm amazing, you all suck, and to their detriment, or to be sort of not aware of the situation and if, maybe what those people are doing. And I think empathy comes into play, because I'm a very empathetic person. So I'm always like, this isn't the time to share this because this person's struggling and they don't need to hear my win right now. So it's also being just having that awareness. But I think the arrogance is more of this spotlight on you, whereas confidence is just this bright light that is your help.
Yeah. If I can think about it, like, that's really helped, using the word light, but illuminating to me is that I think when we are coming from a place of service and we stand on our value, that is a confidence. Whereas the arrogance, oftentimes I find that people who are arrogant and they're sort of narcissistic, they don't give a crap about other people. And who wants to work with the people that are like, me, the most important person, me? They're not about the other person. They're all about themselves. And that it's usually the insecure people or narcissists. Actually, narcissists can come across as being like, well, they come across as arrogant. But insecure people will also have to, and I've had that too, where sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit insecure or small, I'll have to be like, well, did you know I worked with this person? Did you know I worked with that person? Like, I'll start to boast about some of the accomplishments. And then I realize, God, you sound like a jerk. But it's me feeling insecure in that particular moment too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So, okay, so we talked a little bit about like some of the biggest misconceptions about what you do, which, I mean, we've sort of tackled a little bit of that, which is like, people just think, you just do the genie show up and like and anybody can do drawing, anybody can do that. Obviously, you can't. Not everybody can come up with a brand, even though we have Canva and we have these tools that make it a little bit easier, a little bit more turnkey. It's not the same.
Well, and that also leads to a lot of generic brands, right? Because if you're using the same stock image or same stock logo as somebody else, then, you're going to look like everybody else, right? So I also agree with you in that you can't read the label inside the jar. And I've used that analogy too. And I think it's relevant because what I do is I provide a perspective that they, you know, didn't know was maybe staring them in the face, or it can be uncomfortable. We're looking at what really makes them different and leverage past experience and creating their own signature process to, really make that unique. And until you have that foundation and you have the clarity and confidence in your messaging, how you show up, which is what most people are lacking. Most people jump right to, I have a business, I need a logo and a website. And then they start creating things in silos. They're like, oh, now I need social media. And then they have a little bit too much fun on Canva with fonts and colors and layouts, and it's wildly inconsistent. That's one of the biggest kind of things that I see, mistakes that I see people making. It's a great tool, but it also means that a lot of people are looking the same, or you're just flip-flopping and changing things too much. And so I think it's really important to lay that foundation so that you're like, this is how we show up. This is what we stand for. This is who we work with and serve, so that you're always recognizable that by the right people. Because if you're being everything to everybody, or flip-flopping, or like you've got this look for your podcast and this look for your website and this is your tone on social media, and they visit all of these places because they are your clients are looking you up and they're checking you out. And if there's a question in their mind from one platform to the next, that is, am I in the right place? Is this the same company? I don't see that photo of a person, or I don't understand what they do, or like any of those things that start to come up, they'll start to lose trust and faith in you. And they might just go, okay, this isn't the right company for me. Because that consistency of everything you do, it doesn't start with design. In fact, on the back of my book, you've probably noticed it says, think first, design later. Even as a designer of over 20 years, I trained as a graphic designer. I worked as one for many, many years. I know the importance of design, but the design is meaningless unless you have the foundation and the language and the personality to back it up. That's the only way to stand out in your industry, is really to live up to this authentic brand. And we can't do it alone. I didn't create my own brand. I hired a brand strategist to help me with the messaging and a designer to help me with the design, because I knew I was too close to my own business. And this is what I do for other people.
Yeah, that's interesting to say that, because I think I think that would be a misconception for a lot of people too. Because I didn't know that you worked with somebody else on your own stuff, but it's so true. And I think to your point about being the jack of all trades and master of none, I've seen this so often, particularly with people in my competitive landscape, that will hang a shingle and they'll say, I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I keep kind of going like, what are they now? And it's so they're not top of mind when it comes to, oh, Leslie, I need a so-and-so that can help me with this. They're the last person I think of, because I really don't know what they do. Which one are you this week? Are you the person who writes LinkedIn profiles? Are you the person who, does social media management? And people would think, well, that's all the same thing, but not necessarily.
Yeah. And brands evolve too, right? Yeah, like I think a lot of people might be going, but I'm changing, or my clients are changing, and that's okay. It's when you're flip-flopping and you're thinking in scarcity mindset, right? If you're just going, oh my God, we need a client now, I'm just going to take this project on, and then you're going to probably regret it, because they're going to be the wrong client. You're going to hate the work. You're going to miss other opportunities, whatever that might be. It's going to pull your focus from what you're good at, and prevent you from really attracting more of those right clients. And so it is important to, really stay true to what you want.
Yeah. And I know that's hard, but that scarcity mindset, it's like dating. It's like you can tell the people out there that are like, please just go out. Like somebody who's, like you get that same sort of energy of someone who's desperate versus someone who's like, I'm pretty awesome, and if you want to hang out with me, that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing of sort of standing in that value as well, right? It's just that scarcity. You can feel it. You can just sort of feel those people that are like the close talkers. It's like, it's the same kind of idea of being just sort of like, okay,
yeah,
back it up a little.
You have to be okay to say no. I remember when I made Brand Camp an essential part of our process, and I'm like, people would call and they're like, can you just design a logo for me or a website? And I'd say, no, first we have to do brand camp because, and I, just like the ribbons, I never apologized that I didn't. I'm like, sorry, I can't, I don't do this. It's like, no, I don't wrap ribbons around my wedding invitations back in the day. And now it's like, no, the reason why everyone goes through brand camp is because what I've seen is that every person leaves that process more confident, more clarity, and our design work got better because of what that process gave us. So it gave us a gift and the client a gift. And so now I say it's detrimental to you and us if we were to skip this process. And it is a non-starter. Nobody in the last probably 4 years has worked with us without going through brand camp first, which means we lose a lot of business. However, it's the wrong business. If you think that your brand is just a logo or a website, or you just need that, there are plenty of people who can do that. That's not what we do. It would dilute my brand. And that is something I've been really good at in the last 17 years, whichever business I was in. I never diluted my brand. I am known for something now, just like I was known for something in my previous business.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I thought that it was going to get better with age. It's getting a little bit better with age, but that very Canadian sorry, is still a part of my vocabulary. It's still something that I do, like saying no is not an easy thing for me, particularly with business and people like, oh, can you speak for free because, for exposure, and I like, and then I have to reframe that in my brain. Maybe I'll just get a little, one-on-one session with Laura to say, it's okay to say no, it's okay, because when you're saying no to certain things, you're opening up the door to other things, right? And that scarcity model and saying, saying no, it does, like you said, like it does allow you to repel those people that are not going to fit. And it's the same thing when people, I don't even chase, thankfully, I don't chase people anymore when it comes to people are like, oh, that's a lot of money that you charge for LinkedIn profile writing. Some people are telling me I'm not charging enough. Some people tell me I charge too much. I don't chase them anymore. If it's too much money for them, the same thing as you. It's like, well, then you don't get what I do, and that's okay. Like I'm not. It's okay.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, and I think I think I have the answer to this. So you've told me about your background about when you were in school and you had a really bad car accident, which I'll let you elaborate on because it's your story. And is that where, I think you told me that's where you became a little bit more bold because you almost died? Is that part of why you just were like, you know what, I'm gonna do me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna.
It wasn't an overnight process, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But I've shared, actually spoke for many years about this experience. And, one thing that was clear to me was that I wasn't truly living before it happened, right? I was kind of, as many of us are, going through the motions and always wanting to be ahead. Like I always, even when I was little, I always wanted to be a grown-up. I always wanted to be older. I always wanted to be like, I wasn't living in the moment so much. And the night of my car accident, I was feeling miserable and sorry for myself. I was heading back to pull an all-nighter on a project I did not want to do for a teacher I did not really like. And, I was in a head-on collision with a drunk driver and almost died. So, and that was 25 years ago this past November. And, I spent the better part of 2 years recovering. And so it wasn't immediate that I was like, well, now I'm like, I have a new lease on life. It's not that quick. But, I did go back to school. I did finish my education. I was back in hospital partway through that second year as I was redoing it because I lost that year and almost lost that year again. And because of my sheer pigheadedness and determination and the support of like my doctors and my classmates and my teachers, I finished my semester because I was like, I'll be damned if this is going to put me back behind another year. Same with the drugs, right? I was given a lot of medication. Now, when I think back, going, holy crap, I don't know why I was given so much drugs at a time. Seems like that would probably have been a bad idea to give that amount of Percocet to an 18-year-old. But I hit a point where I was like, I am not going to be a drug addict at the end of all of this. That is not how this story is going to go. And so it shifted me into this, like, that always was in me. I think that determined, like, when they said you may never walk properly again, I was like, watch me. You might never ski again. Watch me. I skied, 4 times. It was a short season this year, but like I've done everything mostly just to defy them and say, yeah, right, I can do that. And so I think it's important that, I mean, it doesn't have to take something dramatic like what happened to me to help us take those bold moves. Unfortunately, most people, us humans, we like that, like, okay, this like push you into a corner and you're like, you fight or you give up. And I feel like we're kind of in that right now in a way with the pandemic, that, we're all kind of fed up. My kids are home again, as I'm sure, like it's a tough time, but this past year has pushed so many people to go, I'm not satisfied in my work, in my relationship with my body, with my diet, with my life where I'm living. People are making radical changes, because they're like, they've seen the value, they've come maybe almost face to face with mortality and thought, this isn't how my life is going to go. And so I really felt like, I wrote about this in the beginning of the pandemic, that I was having this sense of deja vu earlier last year. And I was like, why do I feel like I've been here before? And I realized that I have been here before. After my car accident, I was isolated. I couldn't go to work, right? I lost my year of school. I couldn't work. My parents, I had to move back home with my family. I couldn't take care of myself. I was physically unwell, not like today, but the whole world is in this place where we're isolated. A lot of people have lost their jobs. They can't work the same way. They're, all of these things. And I realized that we can't see it right now because we don't have perspective. We're still in it. When I was recovering from my car accident, I couldn't see the potential. I couldn't see the gift that it could be. And, everything I've done really was the catalyst for it. And so I think in tying that experience I had 25 years ago to today, it sucks for some people more than others. It may not be terrible. It's not terrible for me. It's not ideal, right? I don't love many aspects of what's happening, but I know that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we're going to look back and go, what did I do with my life, my business, my relationships? Is it status quo, or did I make a change and now I'm really living my life? And I know this goes beyond business, but everything I've done, I believe in designing my life, right? It's not perfect. I'm still a work in progress, as everything is. But, as entrepreneurs, we get to design our business the way we want to live, right? The way we want to work, who we want to work with. That's the beauty of this, is if you have people you don't really want to work with or work you don't really want to do, then create a business that does the work that you really want to do and that people will pay you to do and will value. So sort of a roundabout story from like what that gave me. And I think it's just looking at this adversity that we're all facing today and knowing that we can't, it's that you can't see the forest for the trees. We're in it, and it can be really hard. The one thing that I found the hardest in recovering from my car accident was the unknown. There were so many unknowns. They didn't know. There was issues with my health that they couldn't figure out. And right now it's the unknowns that are the most unsettling, I think, for many people. When will this end? When will we be able to do things? When will we feel safe? When can we hug people? There's this list of unknowns. And I think that's what so many of us are struggling with the most. And I remember that it was like, I said, I'd rather just know and be like, okay, now we know. And now I can plan for that. I can wrap my head around whatever it is that's going to happen and move forward. And we're in this kind of place where we don't really feel like we're in like purgatory in a way, it feels like sometimes.
100%. And I felt the same way when I was going through my divorce too, right? That like, oh, when's this gonna, like, just the feeling. It's like, I chose this. I decided. I made the decision. Why does this still hurt so much? And I mean, I've seen this with other people because it seems like everybody wants to share all this information on Facebook. Is like when people go through that transformation, you see like in about a year, maybe year two, how people really, it's like the phoenix rising through the ashes. All of a sudden people are like, no one's gonna mess with me anymore. Like it's like from a personal level, from a professional level, you see people being a little bit braver to take on risks when they know like what's the worst thing that can happen. I mean, we all live in this sort of there's fear rules a lot of what we do. We're afraid of success, we're afraid of failure. And I find that often I still, every like new thing that I try, even doing this video, like this video series, like the very first day with Amy, I was like, I'm freaking out. Like I'm still, like even before you came on, I was still a little nervous right ahead of time. But it's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, which I heard early on in my entrepreneurial career too, is it's taking the baby steps. It doesn't have to be a big leap. It doesn't have to be like, okay, so when it was quarantined or when we were in the pandemic, I turned into Picasso. I've been doing, I don't even have any with me. I've been doing like paint by numbers. And they're like really like elaborate paint by. It's not like, little teddy bears and stuff like that. It's like landscapes. It's like, it's like some, I don't have them right here though, but I have some really, really lovely ones that are really intricate and fine. So that's what I've been doing to keep myself occupied. But it's doing the little things I find. It's raising your hand, writing LinkedIn profiles. I don't have a background in writing. I was like, oh, somebody else who took English as a major in school should have raised their hand. And I was like, why not me? I know the channel. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. I think I'm a pretty good writer. I've been told I'm a pretty good writer. So let's do this. And it's those little things where it's like, I think often it's like taking that step in Indiana Jones, right? It's like taking that, okay, let's do this. And if the one thing I've learned with NLP is like, there is no failure. There's only feedback. And I have to remind myself all the time when I'm afraid of doing something, it's like, just do it and see how it works. And if it didn't work out, at least you learned something. So it helps me to.
Yeah.
I'm still all the time.
I think we're in a time of creativity. I think, now more than ever, people need to put on their creative hats and be like, just because something hasn't been done before, it doesn't mean you can't try it. Like experiment, try new things, see what works, because you've got an opportunity in your business to stand out. And if you haven't seen somebody do something before, well, it's a perfect opportunity. And I'll share, last year, sort of right after everything locked down, people couldn't actually order my book through Amazon because Amazon was only shipping essential goods. And so I'm like, all right, well, people can't get my book in their hands. So I'm like, well, why don't I go online and just read my book live for people? And so over the course of a week, I read like a couple of chapters every day at like lunchtime, and people could come on and join me and whatever. And I signed up 2 clients because I did that. And I'd never seen anybody do it before. And then of course, a couple of weeks later, I saw like Marianne Williamson reading one of her books live. And I was like, huh, all right. I did it first, Laura. She has no idea who I am. But it's just fascinating to me that was an experiment. I'm like, I've never done this before. I've never seen an author do this. I don't have an audiobook. I didn't have an ebook either. And so I thought, this could be fun. Why not? And with no even intention of it bringing in clients, but people emailed and they're like, you know what? This made me realize now is actually the time to work on my business, because I can't do a lot of the things in my business that I would normally be doing. So they were willing to invest even though their business had slowed or stopped completely, because they could see that they now actually had the time to do it. And, I often say, well, experiment, try new things. And if it doesn't work, you have the perfect scapegoat, right? Just blame the pandemic for a reason why something didn't work and you move on.
Yeah.
But also keep it on brand. Like if it's something that really doesn't align with you, or is like got like an angry slant to it, or something that just feels really off, like maybe not that, but I just mean, get creative with your marketing. Go on video. People are not looking for perfection. They're looking for you.
Real. They're looking for real people.
Yeah.
Authenticity
Exactly.
is so crucial.
Yeah.
And I get that question too when people, like almost every time I do a LinkedIn training, people will say, well, I'm a little bit of this and I'm a little bit of that. Do you get that as well? Like in my part-time, I do this, or I've made a career change. I used to be a photographer, but now I'm an accountant, or vice versa, or things like that. Do you get that same thing too? Like, how do I bring that all together?
Yeah. And that's what I'm really good at. It's like marrying those worlds and tying in what it comes from your background, because people just seem to like put a separation, like that's the old me or the old thing that I used to do and now this is the new me. And there's usually so much gold in what I can sort of mine from their past life into their new business, because it creates interesting messaging and language and things that we can weave into their business and their positioning, because that's what makes them unique from everybody else doing the same, selling the same, trinket or service. It's their experience, it's who they are and what they've done in the past that we can leverage in their brand.
Yeah. And did we talk the last time we got together pre-pandemic? Did we talk about the wabi sabi? Did we talk about that?
I don't think so.
So what I've learned is that this idea of wabi sabi is this Japanese art form that is finding the beauty in imperfection. And so when as you know, a cup is broken or a bowl is broken, it's glued back together with gold because it's the imperfections that make it more beautiful. That perfect, I think perfect is boring. When something is a little too perfect, it's sort of like, eh. It's the
Yeah.
uniqueness. It's like the people that are showing up authentically, like people like you, like that. Like, I mean, how many clients did I have at wedding bells? I mean, there's not that many of them that I had like have a 17-year friendship with. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
because you show up authentic and we connected and all that other stuff. And I think that's what people want to do with other people. And I think there's so much fear of not being perfect. I'm not going to do it until it's perfect. But we're human beings, right? And so I just love this idea of wabi sabi, because all those same things that I beat myself up, the same things that I have my imperfections on, are the same things that make me me. So instead of rejecting those parts of me, I'm still learning to embrace those parts of me because it makes me unique and different.
Yeah. And I think that's what everybody needs to, we need to take stock and like, when everybody has the perfect teeth or the perfect this, or they all start to look the same, you're like kind of generic. It's when you think about, actors or something, it's the ones that have like unique features or a unique way of being that are the most memorable. It's not that they're the prettiest or the most handsome or have the most perfect teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with any of that. It's how you're showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important to be your best authentic self.
Do you find that you do that with clients? I find I feel like that's a part of my housekeeping, because of course I'm not the challenger. I'm not the person who likes to I don't like to put like pushing people outside of their comfort zone, but I find that I do a lot of cheerleading. Are you doing the same thing with your clients as well, of like, you can do this, you're awesome? Like, it's just sort of that like, I know you do that with me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do push, I'm not like an aggressive pusher, but I will
Gentle.
um, lovingly push people to just do things a little bit differently, and not just because that's what everybody else is doing, to really start to push to challenge the status quo. That's something that I really believe in. And so I see myself as their like cheerleader, motivator, and really there to inspire them, because typically I'm maybe a few years ahead of where they are, or so I've been where they've been, and they know that I understand that, and I can be their guide.
Mm-hmm.
Right, everybody's journey is going to be different, but sorry, go ahead.
Just, I think some people like myself, I'm that kind of person who sort of just needs that, yeah, you can do this, like whether it's my own little voice in my head or having somebody else that I can bounce an idea off of. That they're, and if I was actually even having my this conversation with my son yesterday at 14, he's like, Mom, you don't really, you tell me to stand my value all the time and you're not doing the same thing, which was like, whoa, like,
Oh,
yeah,
busted.
smackdown from a 14-year-old. And so far as like, it's so interesting that, and he's, mirroring back to me the same things that I've been saying to him. And oftentimes we do need that little nudge or that cheerleader and the gentle sort of push, because it is getting out of our own way. The same thing like writing the book, right? Going on television, speaking in front of crowds. And I find that all of those things, it wasn't natural to me. And some people have come up to me afterwards. I'm sure the same thing has happened to you. And they're like, how do you do it all? And I'm like, you have no idea. Like, you have no idea that, the behind the scenes that is going on. And nor does, like, I have friends that work in to your point, like of the actors and actresses. She's like, behind the scenes, those people aren't the same people. Those are actors. That's what they're doing. But we covet that sort of like, oh, if I was only as confident as they are. And the more podcasts or interviews that I'm seeing with actors nowadays, they're riddled with insecurity. So many of them are riddled with them. So I think, our, to your point, and I love this, is like, your personal best is going to be different than somebody else's personal best. And we can't compare ourselves. I think stay in your own lane, because, the way that I show up or the way that you show up may be very different than the way somebody else shows up. And they can't, if they're in the beginning of their journey, they certainly can't expect to. And that was a big thing for me in the beginning too. It was like the first 5 years, Laura, when I would just like, oh my gosh, like this is like I'm not making the money that I want to be making. And why am I not making the money that I want to be making? And it was like, well, I hadn't really earned it in a way. And I think that there's like the snake oil salesman of the people that go, if you just take this, and I can, in 6 weeks, I can turn you into a millionaire. I was like, that would be nice. I I had that secret sauce, that recipe, that silver bullet. I wish I had that, but I don't think it's out there. Otherwise, we'd all be doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So as we kind of get down to the end, so we talked about almost everything. Insofar as like, do you have any sort of other belief and spirit? Like, do you like motivation? I like mine is the wabi sabi. That's my like. Anytime I sort of get down on myself, I'm like, wabi sabi. Like, do you have anything that you sort of have like a truism for you, a mantra, belief, or anything like that 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 you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have many, but one I've shared a lot, and I heard somebody say it years ago, and I've just like really latched onto it because it was so true to me, and I've written about it, and that's to teach from your scars, not from your wounds.
Ooh,
So I don't know if you've heard me say that before. So, and I have scars, right? I did a photo shoot of my scars, and I talk about what these scars, and we all have scars, whether they're visible or invisible. And it's about what they can teach us about ourselves and how we can use them to teach others. But it's not like if you have a gaping wound, you can't teach from that place. You will not, you have to wait until the scar is healed, the wound is healed, and you're on the other side of that. Like, so if I relate that to my car accident, there's no way I could have helped somebody else struggling with a car accident, injuries, and all the aftermath while I was going through that myself. I would have come across angry, hurt, sad, scared, bitter, all of those things. But now, years later, after I processed through it, did my recovery, did all of the hard work, now I'm in a place where I can really help people, because I've learned I can share the gifts of those scars to help other people. So that's just from a personal note. But if you think about your business or any aspects of your life, if you wait to share something that happened after you've gone through it, you're on the other side, you've learned what you needed to learn, and you can share something valuable that will help others. That's what that idea means, to teach from your scars, not from your wounds. Because if you're teaching from your wounds, people will lose faith in you. They'll think, they might feel uncomfortable. If people feel sorry for you because of what you're sharing, it's really hard to go back from that. They might think, oh, is this person still going to be in business? I'm not sure they're in a place where they could take on my business. And you can lose a lot of credibility when you share that level of vulnerability. And I just finished reading Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, and she talks a lot about vulnerability. And vulnerability isn't going on in like verbal diarrhea of all your problems on social media, right? But it's about sharing the truth, but that doesn't mean you have to share every aspect of your life either.
Yeah, I'm still
as
learning.
a play-by-play,
I'm
you
still
know.
learning that one too, Laura. As a talker, I'm like, blah, 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 especially when I was going through my divorce. It was like, I don't know you, but you want to hear my story. I'm like, I'll tell anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Like, people are probably like, whoa, crazy woman. Because I've met those people. I became that person. They probably were like, I don't even know you. Why are you telling me your life story? But, you're right. Because I was so wounded. I was in such a place of, it was nobody's business for me to go on and natter on about that kind of stuff.
But maybe that was also part of how you were processing it, right?
Yeah, it was. But I could have sort of kept that within the inner circle of my trusted friends,
Yes, that's what I say. Keep it with your inner circle.
as opposed to people at the grocery store. Hey, girl, I don't know you, but
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Awesome. Well, it's been so great connecting with you today.
So I know you got to run. So you're in brand. So you have brand camp every month,
Yep.
and so people can sign up at is it labcreative.ca?
Yeah, labcreative.ca. If you want to check out how to work with us, you can book a discovery call. We also have a great quiz if you want to see where you are with your branding right now, and that's labcreative.ca/quiz. But the link is also on our website too.
Yeah, people love taking quizzes. I love quizzes. And so in the brand accelerator, is that a bigger to do? That's a more of your flagship, like really big, like we're going to get right into the weeds and stuff, right?
Yeah, it includes brand camp, design, and 6 months of that cheerleading, motivation, inspiration, training, and ongoing support with implementation.
Oh, that is so cool. And people can get your book. Is it like, where are the other places that people get your book?
Amazon and from our website as well.
I usually say too, like I tell people like, since I'm selling them myself, like it's Amazon takes such a big cut when you publish through there. So if I'm telling other people, if you can go onto Laura's website, because
Amazon, and you get a signed copy if you buy it through us. So
yeah. So ideally, you want to support the entrepreneur as opposed to I love Amazon for lots of different reasons, but I want to support you in your business. So go on to labcreative.ca to get Laura's book, to sign up for Brand Camp, to find anything else you need to know about Laura. So the one call to action that I want to ask everybody is if there's the biggest aha takeaway, because I know I've had a lot of like moments. There's so many that I can't wait to like go back and rewatch this, Laura, because you've blown my mind once again. We've been friends for a long time. You blow my mind every time we talk. So we want to hear from you guys about your biggest takeaway. And then next week I'm going to talk with he's an award-winning sales trainer by the name of Phil Gerbishak, and somebody that I could introduce you to, Laura. This guy Phil is amazing. He's based out of Tampa. I just love this guy, and he's also a LinkedIn sales trainer. So it'll like be whatever that word is, because I don't consider him a competitor. I consider him to be a friend, and probably he on his own podcast he gets Seth Godin, Tom Peters, like he gets these huge names. I'm like, who are you, Phil Gerbishak? Like, you're amazing. So I guess we'll talk about that next time with Phil.
Amazing.
So, so it'll be really cool. So thank you again, Laura, for spending the time.
My pleasure.
With me, and it was great catching up with you. So we'll talk soon.
All right. Yeah, definitely. I've got to run. Bye.
Okay. Bye, honey.